Good evening, Sports Talk, and happy Halloween. This is your military blogger for Week 10 of the college football season. Last week in our game of the week, our only game in the military last week, Navy had a successful homecoming, even in their record to 4-4 behind a career day by quarterback Keenan Reynolds. He ran for a ridiculous 241 yards and 3 touchdowns against the team that last year he ran for 240 yards against, but a ridiculous 7 touchdowns. Last week he ran for 251 yards on 39 carries and 3 touchdowns and threw for 56 more yards in a 41-31 win over San Jose State to even Navy's record to 4-4. They now need to win 2 of their final 4 games to be bowl eligible. This week on our military blog, it is our double feature week here on the Pac-12 on the military blog. Excuse me, been a long day, folks. Sorry. The Pac-12 blog will be coming up in regular written form right after this. Our double feature week includes the only 2 games on the military docket this week. The first game is 11:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on CBS. Air Force 5-2 comes into 2-5 Army in the second of 3 legs for the esteemed Commander-in-Chief's trophy. Air Force is on the inside track to getting the trophy back in Colorado Springs for the first time since 2011, while Army, on the other hand, has not won the trophy since 1996. In fact, only has had 2 opportunities to do so in the last 13 years. Army has an opportunity here in front of them, and they need to take it. You come into this game with Air Force, a much improved team from last year. Of course, as I mentioned many times last year, they went 2-10 last year. This year, they're 5-2 with wins over Boise State and Navy, and could easily be 6-1 if they didn't let a game in Wyoming slip away earlier this year up in Laramie. The quarterback for the Air Force attack is Cale Pearson, who has shown that he can also throw the ball. He has thrown 62 times for 107 yards this year, 107 attempts for 957 yards, 7 touchdowns to only 1 interception, and it's really made this offense run a lot better with a quarterback there who doesn't turn the ball over and knows how to run the offense. Nate Romine was not ready for that job last year and was forced into it when Cale Pearson went down with an injury. The senior under center has really calmed things in that offense and has made them much more efficient. And the running back, Jacoby Owens, has had a great year for them. He's carried 143 times for 735 yards, of 5.1 yards per carry average, and 4 rushing touchdowns. This defense, though, is the most improved unit on this team. They held Boise State to only 14 points, Navy to only 21 points, and are coming into this game with an opportunity to become bowl eligible for the first time since 2012 when they went 6-6. Army, on the other hand, comes into this game with the age advantage, although not necessarily the team advantage. They come in with a 2-5 record, although they are 2-1 at home. 4 of their losses have been on the road. However, they have been clunkers for the most part, including, I think 2 weeks ago was their most embarrassing loss of the year. They lost by over 20 points to an 0-6 Kent State team, really had an opportunity to take advantage of things. However, Army has to look at this team and this game as an opportunity to really right the ship. They have a very, very manageable schedule coming up in the next couple of weeks. They have Fordham, UConn, and Western Kentucky coming up after this. All 3 of those games are definitely winnable for the cadets at Army. Army's attack, as compared to Air Force's, much more senior-laden, and really, Army needs to be the desperate team coming into this game tomorrow, because I don't know when the next opportunity Army will have to match up this well with Air Force. Air Force played a triple option team, New Mexico, 2 weeks ago, who had similar talent levels to Army. In fact, I might even argue a bit lower talent level than Army. Probably runs the triple option a bit less effectively than they do, with them being a service academy. They had to squeak out a 35-31 win at home. This one's on the road in West Point. Should be a great experience at Michie Stadium. It's one of the truly great venues in college football, and it's so underappreciated because, unfortunately, the product there just is not up to snuff with the setting. But you look at the Army team, it's a senior-laden team, as I've mentioned many times this year. Their quarterback duo of Angel Santiago, a senior, and A.J. Schur, a junior. Both those men really are not super strong at throwing the ball, but Angel Santiago, has the more accurate but less large arm. He averages less than 8 yards per attempt, but he has thrown for 342 yards and 1 touchdown compared to 1 interception. A.J. Schur has thrown the ball 23 times, completed 10 of them, 195 yards and a touchdown, but averages almost 8.5 yards per attempt. But the strength of this Army team is the running game. And their seniors, this is their last chance to go out winners among the service academies. They had a great opportunity to do it 2 years ago with a similarly deep team against a similarly young Air Force team. Army a couple years ago had their legendary quarterback Trent Steelman under center, plus Larry Dixon, Malcolm Brown, Raymond Maples. They had a team that could really match up. And Air Force came into West Point with a 5-2 record. Army was 1-7 2 years ago in this last matchup. And Army won the game convincingly, 41-21. The question is, can this team of seniors rise up to the challenge again and do that again? Larry Dixon's going to have to be key. He's carried the ball 119 times this year, 683 yards and 5 touchdowns. Angel Santiago averages 5.1 yards a clip. But the guys they really have to spring loose are Terry Baggett, who has amassed 276 yards on only 36 carries this year. That's an average of almost 8 yards a rush. They got to let him spring loose in this game. Raymond Maples is averaging 5.1 yards a carry, but a far cry from his previous production before his injury last year. He was averaging almost 8 yards a carry. He needs to get back up to that level. But this team, again, as I was mentioning, this is kind of this team's last stand. Dixon's a senior. Santiago is a senior. Baggett is a senior. Tony Giovanelli, Raymond Maples, Trenton Turrentine are all seniors. This is their last chance to truly go out winners and get that Commander-in-Chief's trophy, something Army has not done since 1996. Defensively, they need to do better as well. And offensively, they need to take care of the football. That has been their biggest Achilles heel over the last couple of years. I'll never forget the Army-Navy game 2 years ago. They trailed Navy 17-13 with 1 minute and 10 seconds left. They were at the Navy 13-yard line, and they were gashing the Navy defense for about 6 yards a pop. All they had to do was keep that pace that they were going to score with no time on the clock and walk away with the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. The streak was going to be over, and they fumbled it away on a botched handoff to Larry Dixon. So Army, to win this game, is going to have to protect the ball, as do all option offenses. That is key to any option offense. You cannot turn the ball over, and the quarterback has to be able to take a lick. I'm going to go with the slight upset. Army is a 3-point underdog in this game. I'm going to take Army to win this one 35-31 in a great, exciting game tomorrow morning to kick off your day, which I think everyone should watch. There's no real good game in the morning windows tomorrow. I'm going to take Army to win this one 35-31 over Air Force on CBS. I think that Air Force next year will blow them out of the water, but this year Army makes a defiant last stand, picks up a win, and puts themselves in position to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy with a win over Navy on December 13th, which is what they did 2 years ago when that scene with Trent Steelman happened. The other game in the military academies this week, number 10 Notre Dame 6-1 against the Midshipmen 4-4. This game in prime time on CBS, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Notre Dame a 14.5-point favorite. I think that's a fair spread going into this game. Notre Dame obviously led by the dynamic Everett Golson, has 19 touchdowns to only 6 picks this year, 62% completion percentage. Also rushed for 4 more touchdowns this year. The keys for Notre Dame, obviously, it's going to be to stop the Army offense, which is kind of like trying to stop a freight train because of the fact, and it's not that the Navy midshipmen have a lot of athletes per se, because they don't, and to say so would be a lie, but they're very efficient, and they give you numerous looks throughout a game. You're going to have to hold, if you can hold Navy to under 350 yards rushing, that is your best bet to win the game. Because if Navy can get going and shorten the game, you don't want that. You need to force a couple turnovers as well, because Navy is not going to penalize themselves out of field goal range. They're not going to penalize themselves needlessly. You're going to have to beat them in the trenches and deal with their cut blocks. For Navy, offensively, Keenan Reynolds has to keep the role he's been on the last couple of weeks. Last week, of course, as I said, rushed for 251 yards. That's his third 100-yard game of the year, his first 200-yard game of the year. He rushed for 3 touchdowns, which is a high for the year. He's got 13 total this year. But you got to remember, this guy last year scored 39 total touchdowns. As a sophomore, the talent is there for him to match up with Everett Golson. He ran for 31 last year and threw for 8 more. This guy is a monster, and he had some legitimate Heisman Trophy hype going into the year. And unfortunately, I think he bought into his own medicine. And when you do that, you mess up. And he even mentioned he was trying to be too perfect, and it was very clear. And it's a shame because Navy's record is not indicative of the team they have. And I've been watching them all year long. Navy's been Navy's worst enemy this year, and it's why they're only 4-4. Against Ohio State, they spotted Ohio State 10 points. They missed a field goal and fumbled one away for a recovered touchdown for Ohio State. That made it, instead of 27-20, 34-17. They spotted Temple 10 points, so they had to escape that one. They spotted Texas State another 7. They spotted Rutgers 10 points. They spotted Western Kentucky 10 points, and they spotted Air Force 10 points. They lost all 3 of those games. They even spotted VMI 7 points, but because of the fact that VMI is a terrible football team, it didn't really matter. Last week was the first time where Navy played a truly turnover-free game. They made 1 turnover. They were able to make a stop on the other end and get a turnover back, and no one turned the ball over again the rest of the night. So going into this one for Navy, they have to play another mistake-free game, especially against a team like Notre Dame. They do not have the athletes to stack up to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. It is the bottom line. They have to grind out probably a good 400 rushing yards in this game, shorten the game, and not turn the ball over to have a shot to win this one. They did that last year, but were not able to make one last play. Nick Sloan missed an extra point in that game, which kept them from being able to kick a field goal, and who knows what had happened from there. So this year, they can't make mistakes like that if they want to win the game. However, they are in position to do well this year. They average 6.3 yards a carry. They have ran for 27 touchdowns. And Keenan Reynolds is not the only guy who can beat you in that backfield. Noah Copeland, the senior fullback for Navy, averaging 8.7 yards a clip this year. Chris Swain, the other fullback, averages 6.8. The slotbacks, Jeffrey Whiteside and DeBrandon Sanders, average 8.1 and 9.3. And Ryan Williams-Jenkins has been sidelined for a while, but I heard he might be back this week, averages over 10 yards a carry. Navy's offense has to get going. They got to do what they do, and they need to not be too cute. They made a couple of questionable play calls this year. They just need to stick to what they do best and let their young wide receiver, who's blossoming into a great wide receiver, Jameer Tillman, who's caught 16 balls for 303 yards this year, to do what he does and make a big play downfield. They got to get a couple passing plays to him to have a shot to win this one. Maybe it's just my homerism speaking, but I'm going to take the Midshipmen to win this one 38-34 in the upset, knock Notre Dame out of playoff contention in a very close game. They were very close last year. I think this year, Navy playing much better than they were at the beginning of the year. Keenan Reynolds is hungry to get this one after the 50-10 drubbing they handed him in Dublin in 2012, although Terry Miller was the quarterback then. He played that game. And then Keenan Reynolds last year had a great opportunity to win on the road and let it slip away. So this year, I think Keenan Reynolds gets his signature win at the Naval Academy. He's already the all-time leader in rushing touchdowns and total touchdowns for a Navy player. He adds to his legacy with a win over Notre Dame. Navy gets to 5-4. And I'm waiting for Guy and Alf and all the rest of the Notre Dame fans to pick me apart for that one. Have a good night. Happy Halloween, guys. The Pac-12 blog coming up next in written form.